the show. I really appreciate each and every last one of you all. Thank you all for making this thing grow. Cowboys Experience. We got an event tomorrow. We actually do at Lava Cantina at 2 o'clock. I want you guys to meet me there. Just don't meet me there, beat me there. But I got my brother from another mother. Go ahead and tell him who you are.
What's up? This is DDP from the Dallas Prospect, back to talk a little bit of Cowboys. And this week we got the Packers on deck.
Wow.
I'm looking forward to this because the Packers have been a thorn in our side for some time. It's time to trim that bush.
Right.
Which sounded way worse than my literal explanation. So we're off to a grade A start here.
Grade A. Hey, they talking about they got grade A cheese. It's time to shred them cheese. Then the cheesehead Packers. How
yes,
about that?
let's by all means go with that instead of what I just said.
But I can't stand that old Aaron Rodgers, the nature boy. Woo, Ric Flair that he is. You see the way he plays. And there was an article out there or excerpt of saying that the reason why he's always up to the level to play against the Dallas Cowboys is because of the stadium is so nice, especially if you're coming out of Wisconsin. Their stadium not even close to our. We got some high school stadiums that's a whole lot better than their stadium. So I can feel him what he's talking about with that.
Yeah, I mean the Packers are like the only publicly owned team in the NFL. Like I think in professional sports for America. So
right,
yeah, it's a weird bit for sure, but. Kind of cool, I guess, if you can have a percentage of your fan base that actually has a technical shared interest in it. So,
yeah,
interesting. But yeah, you're going to have things where they tell you about the historicness of Lambeau and all that, and it certainly is. But it's also a fancy way of saying it's not the nicest at this point.
Yes, indeed. It's weird when I talk to you on this show. Normally, we don't really recap the last game because it's on a Friday, and the last game would have been way, way, way far long ago, right? But neither here nor there. You did had an article, and I just want you to touch a little bit on that article you wrote, so that everybody can understand what you really meant about it, so those won't be led astray.
Right. So you're referring to my last piece for clutch points. I basically talked about, if you read the article, it's way less inflammatory than the headline sounds. The headlines will get occasionally reviewed and tweaked by an editor. So just keep that in mind. I can put a guideline, but ultimately it's going to go down as whatever they think will drive traffic. But yeah, the idea of the article was, not that the Cowboys literally stopped trusting Dak, but that the game plan and all of that played less to his ability, and the things that we saw when he emerged through those first 3 weeks of the season, we didn't really incorporate much of any of that. And even, we talked about last year, even with regard to, you got to utilize his legs a little bit, his mobility.
Right.
He had one carry for 7 yards in the game, and that was early. Meanwhile, we kept running on first down 50% of the time in the first half. We had 11 first down rushing attempts, and for those, we netted less than 2 yards per game, per attempt. Zeke's best run of the day, 6 yards, was his third carry of the game.
Right.
A lot of things like that. It's okay, this element's not working, and rather than adjust the game plan to fit within what works best for Dak in that case, what was working for you in those first 3 weeks, I felt that they didn't really do that, and there wasn't as much of those elements. I understand your game plan tweaks, but that's what the article was about. Just hey, you got this guy, you're talking like you're ready to pay him the big bucks. At the very least, play to his strengths when you need it, and I felt like they were a little conservative and a little stubborn in that particular case. So that was the basis of the article. Of course, the headline grabbed a lot of negative attentions, and so there were certainly some people who took it as me taking a shot at Dak or the Cowboys, and I'm not even close to what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. But that's good, though. We need to have different, objective views, and I guess that's what the, clutch point, perspective was, to at least pull in some people with some different views as it relates to that headline, and then when they read into the meats and the potatoes of everything, they realize and saying, okay, this is a fair and balanced article. Now, my thing is, when you start talking about Jason Garrett and the trust factor of, do he really have the trust factor in Dak Prescott? One thing that I can say, and it could be me overlooking Kellen Moore's situation, because when Kellen Moore got the position, we have to remind ourselves there will be some growing pains. This guy cannot just come out there and walk on water and expecting everybody to go 16-0 through the regular season. It just don't happen that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, the Cowboys stumbled. It's not the end of the world that they stumbled. I heard some people talk about with regard to the game, not to linger on it too much, that they would have rather if we lost that we lost in a shootout. I actually feel the opposite because my biggest concern was the defense through the first couple weeks. And even though they've been better the last couple weeks, I still had some concerns there. That was, I understand it was Breeze or it wasn't Breeze, it was Bridgewater. But at the same time, I felt like that was pretty much a masterclass against them. And defensively, it resonated quite a bit with the previous year as well, which now makes me think, okay, defensively, we've got their number. And I felt like we played in our old kind of conservative style, not per se. I understand the Cowboys and kind of the people around them have pushed back against that. But I feel like if we can just figure that aspect of it out, we can hold down a very high-powered offense who has to lean on their offense. The fact is our offense is coming into this year, we expected it to be the accenting feature that makes our team so good. So to me, even though you lost, it's like 10 points is the outlier more than likely. And so I view it as like, okay, now my concerns about the defense, save for more turnovers, is put to ease after the first 3 weeks.
Yes, indeed. And this is the thing. This defense, as we like the previous week before the Saints game, we was like, hey, where's the defense? Where's the defense? And the defense shows up and the offense, they're like, we can take a vacation now, but it didn't work that way, you see. But I will say this, looking forward to the Green Bay Packers, and enough of those New Orleans Saints talk. Moving forward to the Green Bay Packers, I would say that if we can't run the ball against them, then we have a bigger issue than what we saw last week. Because I'm looking at the Green Bay Packers. They allowed, I don't know the actual number, but I can say
5.
this. How many yards they allowed for?
5 yards a carry.
5 yards per carry. Come on, Ezekiel. Come on, Kellen Moore. Put the ball in Tony Pollard's hand as well. So we need to have this type of passion out there for these guys to average more than 5. I think we can get 6 yards per carry. Let's do that at least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing is, a lot of fans are going to come out and say, oh, we were running the ball too much on first and second down. Last week, we were so much more successful there. We need to throw the ball more this week in the early downs. True, but you got to actually treat it as the matchup dictates week to week. The Packers have a good secondary, a good young secondary in that regard. Alexander in particular I think he's got a lot of potential, but he's going to be dealing with Amari. Amari's a little hampered. We have Gallup back, so that will help a little bit. You do have a mismatch there, I think. I think it's against is it King that he's going up against, or is it King?
Is it Kevin King, I believe? But he's a little limpy, I guess. Limpy.
Yeah. So if he's out, then Gallup's got an even better advantage there, and Gallup had no setback. So there's some potential there to throw the ball, but that run D for the Packers has not been good so far this year. The Eagles have had one game where they looked like they could run the ball competently, and go figure, it was against the Packers. So there's something there. There's something you look at with that matchup for whatever reason. They're not fixing their run D, but there's been a little bit of a marginalization with regard to the effectiveness of a run game. It's more so you want to build the lead and then milk the clock in the second half, as opposed to just saying, hey, if my running back goes for 100 yards, we've had a great day. Well, how many total yards did you get? 100 yards is nice for a single player, but if you're totaling 350 or something, then it's kind of middle of the road offensive day. Like you need to get those yards later, I think, in that. And that's just kind of that. So the Packers, to that extent, even though they have a weaker run D, they're also without Devontae Adams. That's going to be huge. He's officially been ruled out. So that's a chance for the Cowboys there. But I would say we do have to keep in mind we have lost 7 out of 8 to the Packers.
That's a horrible number. They got our number, right?
It's really, really bad. But at the same time, they do still have Aaron Rodgers. So that's the thing. Like, they might be a little bit hampered. They're a little more beat up even than we are, even with us having to kind of mix and match the offensive line. It sounds like La'el Collins is going to be a game time decision. He's questionable, but they anticipate him playing. He's been dealing with a little bit of a back. We've seen them changing out parts. We know Tyron Smith is out. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they kind of counter the line a little bit, because the line got its butt whooped last week. And I never felt like the play calling adapted to that. So if you can't run, as you said, on the Packers, we have some serious issues.
Yes, indeed, and that offensive line, they need to step it up. I think we paying more money there than any other position in the NFL collectively. So
$14 million more than any other team on their offensive line.
See, you got the stats list right there. And here's the thing, I'm not going to look at the fact that Adam is out because of the fact, was it Devontae Adams?
Devontae Adams, turf toe.
Yeah, turf toe. I'm not worried about the fact, or I'm happy that the fact that he's out or what have you, because every time we play against the Packers, it's always a guy that supposedly be injured or what have you. I remember in the playoff, Aaron Rodgers had one leg basically, and he was still able to run out of the pocket. He was still able to pass the ball down the field and do everything you wanted for him to do out there. So I'm not going to sleep on the Packers. They've been our nightmare for the longest. And then on top of that, it's the inverse, because people fail to realize, who haven't been watching the Cowboys in the past, before Aaron Rodgers was there, Brett Favre used to be a guy that never could win in Texas Stadium. He never could find a win, you see. So now it's the inverse. This Aaron Rodgers, he just find ways. And it can be all kind of crazy stuff. This is going to be a weird game. So if you guys thinking, shout out to you all, Bill Bates and Savage Time and Miss Scouting Pro, all of you all that's in the chat box here. This is going to be a weird game. This is going to be a weird game, because it's always a weird game when we play against the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to do something, right? Like we know they're nicked up. The Cowboys are, even though they got Gallup back. Amari Cooper is still dealing with some issues. You know, even when he had his MRI after the Saints game, I think it was on his ankle. They're like, "Oh no, don't worry, we're not too alarmed, but you don't have an MRI for fun." Right. I forget which show. It was one of the hosts on The Fan made that point. It's true. If there's not some kind of issue, you don't do that. He's nicked up. He's trying to work through it because we need him to. Gallup, we're kind of rushing back a little bit because, I mean, we went 3-0 against three very weak teams, respectively speaking. I know the Giants have been a little better since they added in Daniel Jones, but we didn't have to go against Jones. We went against the first incarnation of the Giants. So went up 3-0 pretty easy. Now we have two good teams in a row. So, if something were to go wrong and you lose both of those, then, you start to really question this team. Like, okay, that hurts you in terms of tiebreakers for the playoffs. That's conference losses, so it counts as, in that regard. So that would be concerning to me. But, and I said this to James the day after that game.
Right.
Sometimes, when Jalen Smith got that sack, for instance, on Bridgewater, we were like, oh, at that moment I thought we were going to win. Then you had the immediate sack on Dak and the Tyron injury, and then I was kind of like, ooh, maybe not. But if Dallas had pulled out that win last week, let's say they get the field goal, or hell, Cobb doesn't get tackled by the ankle there and he breaks it 80 yards at the end of the game for a touchdown, that would have been great. Yeah, we'd be celebrating at 4-0. But human nature is you learn more from defeat than you do from victory. Mm-hmm. Like, so if we're talking about tendencies and needing to clean up your play and execute better, you're more likely to do that coming off of a loss because you're more focused and dialed in and you have more determination than in the other case where it's like, oh, well, we played a bad game. Travis Frederick got whooped up front for a good portion of that game. Uncharacteristic, so I'm not too upset about it. But you look at things like that, and if you did all of that and then still escaped with the win, well, then in your mind you're thinking, well, this game's not going according to plan exactly, but that's all right. We can just turn it on late. Right. No. You need to execute throughout, and that's why I think you almost call it like a moral victory. I hate that expression generally, but I do think that there is something to it. Is you played them tight in their house. You basically showed that, hey, defensively, we are in that ballpark of what we were last year, it looks like. And as a result of that, we're a darn good defense. And now if the offense, is what we think it is at this point, we're going to be really, really tough to beat. And now we're focused. You have our attention now.
Yes, indeed. That's some good stuff right there that you mentioned. Yeah, so coming off a loss, then normally this team back it up and say, okay, hey, we got our back against the wall. We're going to play really tough. And this is another thing that I noticed, my observation of the Dallas Cowboys as well. We need the opposing opponent to call out Dak Prescott. Can somebody please call out Dak Prescott and say, hey, I'm going to shut him down. I'm going to beat him down? Because I think Dak Prescott plays a little bit better when somebody from the opposing team says, man, he can't do this, or we can shut this down, or he's horrible in these factors. So I just want somebody from the Green Bay Packers to give him some bulletin board material, because I think that he plays better when somebody calls him out.
I mean,
right?
historically, yes, but the Saints kind of did call him out.
They did? I missed that. What
yeah, it wasn't anything. It didn't get a whole lot of play, but they basically said in the days leading up to the game that they didn't think that the new Dak Prescott was anything too different. They didn't believe the hype, basically. So after that performance, 22 of 33, 223 yards, no touchdowns. And I know the pick. I almost don't even count the pick. Like technically you do, but it was the Hail Mary. That's like a given. So they probably look at it and think, yeah, we were right about that. And so it is what it is. I just take from that, he's likely to respond just like the whole team. Although I think this is going to be a rush heavy attack. Leading off, I'm going to jump into this one quick thing, even though it's a little out of turn. Bold prediction is not only will Zeke go over 100, I have Tony Pollard also going 80 plus yards with a score.
Man, they just got to give Tony Pollard a chance,
This is one of those games. It's a perfect matchup for him. They barely utilized him at all in the Saints game. And as a result, I think they're going to get a little more creative with the offense. And that is a perfect place to play him, whether it's in a rushing play or a passing play. Hit him on a wheel route. I don't care. Show us some of those receiver skills that you keep talking to us about. You haven't really targeted him to benefit in that way for us yet.
Yeah, the one play that he did play last week was a pass interference play. So the guy create plays regardless. His name is Playmaker on Instagram. So you guys check him out. Shout out to you, Vero. Thank you for making the donation to help grow the nation on the Law Nation page. I really appreciate you for your love and adulations for this team. Here's the thing, DDP. This team, far as from a defensive aspect of it, are you really thinking that D-Law is having a down year with 2.5 sacks, and I think he have 10 quarterback pressures or something of that nature?
Yeah, no, he's not having a down year. People target him because they don't see the sacks, but the thing is, he's facing the highest percentage of double teams of defensive ends in the league right now. I mean, he's facing relentless pressure. Now he's a little banged up too. I mean, he had like 3 different body parts listed on the injury report this week. It was like ankle, shoulder, not the surgically repaired one, but the other shoulder. And I forget what the other injury was, but it was 3 different injuries he had listed, none of which are believed to be super significant, but he's a little banged up.
Right.
And now with Robert Quinn emerging through these past 2 weeks, by the way, even the Cowboys kind of acknowledged, like, yeah, we didn't even think he was going to be this good right out of the gate. So there's reason for hope there. He's got some help and support now, which could open things up for him a little bit because, Quinn got 3 sacks now through 2 games, and he had a 3rd sack in this last game alone, declined basically because of a penalty. So he's going to eventually stop other teams from double teaming D-Law because they're going to be like, okay, well, D-Law, the perception again, like, oh, he's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start. So we'll roll this double team over here to help a little bit more against Quinn. And then that's going to give D-Law more opportunity. That's why you go out and you get a guy like a Robert Quinn. And I've heard the Cowboys even kind of hint at like the consideration of a new deal for Robert Quinn. Cause we got him for a 6th rounder. He's in the last year of his current deal. I never even thought that was like in the cards. I just assumed that he was going to be a 1-year kind of rental player, and then you would get a compensatory pick for him when he left.
Right.
And he's also, I think, 29. So I'm not too high on the idea of giving any kind of deal to him just because it's an extra player you got to pay. But the idea of that seems a little bit to me, but I don't know. Who knows? I mean, they've shown us they're willing to pay anyone they think can kind of help stabilize the ship for a while. So maybe if they can get them on a deal that makes sense to them, they'll do it. But I would also say, let's not, start writing up a contract 2 games in.
2 games
let's
in.
wait until he's at least played half a year.
Because the same people that were saying, hey, you got to pay D-Law, and now they stepping back, DDP, and saying, well, hey, why did we pay D-Law all of this money? Would be the same people who are saying, why did we pay Robert Quinn all of this money the time that he started to slow down? So
right, and keep in mind he's had a major back surgery too.
Yeah. Now, although he's flexible,
D-Law had as well.
Yeah, D-Law had it as well. D-Law is just kind of reminded me of DeMarcus Ware with all of these injuries. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but as we saw with Ware, he had a lot left in the tank even after he left.
Yeah, and then they're not even in the same atmosphere. I'm just going to put that out there on the table.
Agreed.
Because D Ware had some crazy numbers in this particular system. And now that I'm looking at Robert Quinn, I'm looking at it like, man, the flashes, the way he's so quick off the LOS. That bend. He can put that shoulder blade, and I'm telling you, he can cut some turf and grass out there with the shoulder. He can get to the quarterback. He's like, hey, I'm going to have a meeting at the quarterback. Who all down with me? And he's already there. He's like, where y'all at? But we should see benefiting from that side when they start trying to roll the blocks and these sorts of things on that side. If he continue to do that, we should start seeing some more pressure coming up the middle because these guys should be free now. And I'm talking about I think that's why Malik Collins, he's having a quiet year, but Malik Collins is doing pretty good.
Hey, man, we were very high on Malik Collins a couple of years ago, and he didn't immediately reward us, but it's coming back, due time finally to pay us back for that. But he's thriving because of Jalen Smith blitzing more.
Yeah, I saw that,
If you look at his sacks, Malik Collins' sacks this year, more often than not, it's Jalen Smith flying like a banshee down the middle of the middle of the line, and then somebody having to adjust. That allows Malik to disengage and then go after the quarterback. And he owes at least 2 of his. I think he has 3.5 sacks already. Right. He owes at least 2 of them to Jalen.
Right, he does. And then on top of that, if we look at this right quick, DDP, this guy's been quiet all year, but he's been very solid. And that's Leighton Vander Esch. He's not having a sophomore slump. He just been very quiet, So I'm thinking that when it get cold, maybe when everything gets cold outside, that's when we still see the real football. What do you feel?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
the defensive side of the ball, that's when defense shows up when it get cold.
Yeah. Like LVE and Jalen, they've both had pretty good years. I expressed some concern previously with Jalen and his mobility and everything, but the Cowboys have made it pretty clear. The only reason he's seen a sudden reduction in snaps, like he had 65% against the Dolphins, and people are kind of looking around like, what's wrong? What does this mean? That's because they like Joe Thomas a lot, and they want to play him in there a little bit. They want to get benefit out of that, and they want to preserve Jalen to rush the passer more because he is so big and physical. He can do that, and we know, they feel comfortable with him having to go into coverage a little bit and being able to go step for step, even at times with like Pollard and in practice and stuff like that down the sideline and stuff. That's great, but if there's one thing we know he does really well, it is getting north and south. Yeah. So if you get him bolting in a straight line towards the quarterback, he can engage those pass blocking linemen, because when you're pass blocking, you're not meeting him at the point of attack. You're stepping back. You're bracing for impact. And so he's able to use his size and strength to kind of barrel through him and absorb that contact, perhaps break 3, perhaps spring someone else through. We know the Cowboys, they use a lot of kind of misdirection. They love stunts and everything like that, but they will engage a certain guy to spring someone else. So the guy blitzing is not usually the guy that gets to you. That's the distraction or the whatever you want to call it, that opens everything up. And that's why guys like Malik Collins have been able to thrive early this year, I think.
Yes, indeed. So earlier this week, we heard news of Antoine Barbecue Woods back in practice, as well as Tyron Crawford.
Yep.
Who do you make your 46 guy roster opposed to the guys that we have now? Who do you put on the bench?
Well,
I
think
don't
Woods,
activate basically.
Yeah, I think Woods is still a week away. It sounds like so that solves itself for this week. Tyrone Crawford, he had about 3 weeks without practicing because he only did 14 games in that Redskins game. Had the one big sack in that game, but that's something that I don't know how close he is. It sounds like the hip is doing a little bit better. So I don't know. Maybe he's able to come back and be good now. But there's always the chance that, because we were hearing just like a week ago that there was enough concern with the hip, they were almost wondering if he was going to just have to have surgery on the hip to alleviate the issue. So
right.
it sounds like the 3 weeks rest might have helped it for now, but let's see when he has to be physical again. Granted, he's been back at practice, I think, the past couple of days. Let's see how he's able to do in a game at full speed, because he might, if the hip's not right, he might get knocked right back out, or he might have to, kind of call it earlier than he wants for the season, obviously. So if that's the case, then that's going to also take care of itself. But I think Woods comes back after one game. He can definitely help him there. I think Hyder had a great game last week.
51,
he's who he's who basically opened up that Jalen sack at the end of the game that gave us the chance. He flushed Bridgewater out. So that's one of those things too, where you look at that and you say, okay, well, yeah, if you can keep getting production from those kind of guys, the run defense has been much better. I know late in that game, and that's why I talked about it's not necessarily the numbers like in terms of yardage that matters. Right. You saw the Saints late in that game kind of imposing their will on the Cowboys in that second half, running the ball with Kamara. He had that one play where he was bouncing off of everybody. That's one area where the defense still needs to be able to step up and get the stop. But even then, they still gave you the chance at the end of the game. It just didn't work out for the offense. So that's one of those things too, where you held Kamara total yards under 100, which is great, gives you a real chance. But that's something you need to be able to establish. And the Cowboys have been much better in terms of run defense since week 1. I'm encouraged by that. Green Bay does not have much of a run game, so that shouldn't be much of a problem for them. It should be kind of like we saw in those couple weeks, the Redskins and the Dolphins, who had virtually no run game at all, where Dallas can do a lot in that regard. And then you just got to worry about really Aaron Rodgers and what he can do with the bargain bin of receivers he's got currently.
Yes, indeed. I just want to give a quick shout out to everybody that's in the chat box. Really appreciate you all for subscribing and joining in to the Cowboys Experience, as well as Law Nation and DDP. Shout out to you, Bill Bates, and shout out to you, Fly Eagle Fly. He's in the chat box as well. I'm back. He's in there, and as well as Legend Gaming is in the chat. I really appreciate you all. And J Form D, thank you for tuning in to the Nation. Do you have anybody that's live like 95 over there?
Yeah, we got a Gleh. Can't catch him. Can't catch him there as well. I know what I'm talking about. That guy always seems to know what he's talking about. Stevie Mac 23 as well. So salute to you guys over on the prospect page.
Yeah, and if you're live on the Facebook that's in the chats, really appreciate you all. Just make a comment so I can shout out your name. Really appreciate you all that's on the Facebook panel as well. I want to talk about the parity in the NFL. That's what it's supposed to be. Team's supposed to be tight. It's supposed to be always close games. That's what they're aiming for. Especially this press game. It all goes down to what? 1 or 2 plays that can change and flip the outcome of a win or a loss. But I can say that this team, way up there in Boston, man, they talk about who we played in the first few weeks. Don't you know that they got to play the Washington Redskins and they're going to start Colt McCoy this weekend?
Yep.
What a blessing that they walked in on, right?
Yeah, you talk about dysfunction. The Redskins are it. I think James shared something earlier where, even when they've had these young quarterback prospects, how it just seems like there's always a miscommunication or a disagreement between the ownership and the coach on what they like. Robert Griffin III, for instance, claims that Shanahan never liked him and didn't really want him, but the Redskins invested all of those picks into him, and that kind of made things go haywire in that regard. He thinks that's it. I think it's more that you tore up your knee as a rookie, but who am I to judge? And then now with Haskins, he feels like Gruden there doesn't like him and didn't really want him, and that's why they're flipping back now to Colt McCoy. And it's just like, dude, why are you investing first-round picks in these guys if you're not going to actually play them? I just don't understand how you can be – I know Snyder's not a good owner by any means. But it's just like, how are you that off and not on the same page between your head coach and your ownership? It just – something seems like it has to change because, like, dude, we can't invest this high of a pick in them and then do nothing.
Right. We say all of this, Cowboy Nation, not to talk about the Redskins as well as the New England Patriots, but this to show you how much of a blessing we have in number 4, and for his level of consistency, whether you may say it's not the best passer of the ball, he can't hit water if he fell off a boat and these sorts of things, but
Yeah.
it's a blessing for us to have this amount of wins and to have everybody rallying around Dak Prescott. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up that is because Stephen Jones this week said his intentions will be to pay Dak Prescott this weekend. How much of a smoke and mirrors is this coming around?
Man,
to
I
you.
don't know. I hadn't even heard that last update that Stephen Jones thinks it's going to be this weekend. I mean, I thought it was going to get done admittedly early in the season, like 2 or 3 weeks in. But then we've heard stuff saying like, oh, they're not even really that close. It's not even going to come down to it. And I was like, okay, is Dak going to ride this out and drive it into the season to see about maybe even the summer hitting actual free agency? Even though he's not going to leave. And I don't know. I mean, maybe some people want to look at it as like, oh, the first bad Dak game or something like that, and we lose, and now he's suddenly like, yeah, okay, I'll go ahead and get paid. I don't think that's the problem. I just think it's a matter of when things come about. Maybe there's a little bit more willingness now that we're a fourth of the way into the season, or a third of the way into the season at this point, right? No, fourth. My math's not so good off the top of my head, apparently. But
well, we got 4 games in, and then we won 3 out of the 4. So
quarter of the way into the year.
Quarter of the way into it. And then if we look at it from this thing, DDP, if I were to tell anybody, if I were to do a poll and say, hey, Cowboys will start off 3-1. If we was talking like this in 2018 for the 2019 season, I guarantee you 99.9% of the people that's in the chat box would say, yeah. Or 95.5% of the people would say, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take that 3-1 law,
Right.
But it is what it is.
It is funny, too, how many people completely lost faith in the team because they lost to the Saints. Because if you look at, even including playoffs, we're still something like, 10-4 in our last 14 games? 10-3?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, by all means, Titans, Colts, and then you had the playoff game, and now New Orleans. So 10-4 in your last 14 games, and it's like, really, you're jumping off the bandwagon? Like, all right, well, we're gonna pick up steam again. So if you want to try and catch up, by all means, get running.
And this is what I want to bring home too. The Saints beat Seattle, right? We just saw the game yesterday. I don't know if you watched the game. It was a good game. Seattle versus the LA Rams, right? But the LA Rams beat the Saints. So it's all going to work its way out, Cowboy Nation. This is supposed to be any given Sunday, but this is any given Thursday, any given Monday, and any given Sunday. These teams are good out here in the National Football League. They scheme, they plot, they figure out ways to beat each other. And just like I said, the LA Rams beat the Saints, right? And the Saints beat the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks then in return beat the LA Rams. So let this all play out. Just let it play out before we judge a team and say this is going to be trash.
For sure. I mean, wait until we see when we get to the midpoint of the season and assess it. And even then, I don't think there's going to be any kind of last year you had the 3-5 start and we were saved by the Amari Cooper trade. That's not on the horizon. You can't bank on that. But I think this team is going to be in a much better position anyway when they get to that midpoint. I think that they might be – let's see. We got our bye week after 7 games, so the 8th week is our bye week, I believe.
Right.
So we should be sitting somewhere around 6-1, 7-1. I guess it'd be 6-1 because the bye week is week 8. If you're sitting in that position, by no means should you be looking at this like, oh, yeah, but can we beat the good team? No, man. If you do that, that means you went through a Green Bay team that is still going to contend for the playoffs, especially in that division where, the Bears were good last year, but now they're without Trubisky for a while. You got Stafford, who's a decent quarterback, despite that week 1 thing with the Cardinals. Detroit looks, competent at least. And then, just that division in general doesn't incite a lot of fear. So the Packers are going to contend still. You got to worry, I guess, a little bit about the Eagles. They're banged up, but I think they're also kind of through the worst of that stretch in terms of the offense. They're going to have Alshon Jeffrey back. They're going to have Deshaun Jackson back.
Yeah.
They're going to be a tough game when that rolls around, but you got them here. So focus on that. Take it a week at a time. It's cool. but don't panic just because we lost by 2 points on the road in one of the hardest stadiums to play in.
Right, right. And then on top of that, I have to go back to this talk with the offensive line, if you guys
Yeah.
don't mind. Um, Here's the thing. All week, they've been moving Connor Williams like I guess, musical chairs. They put him out right tackle for a day, and then they said, you know what, we're going to kick you back at inside. Yeah. And then they put I forgot this other guy's name, at right tackle. And my thing is, Brandon Knight, right? They put him at right tackle, and then they moved, I guess, Connor Williams back inside. My thing is, why not, in college, I think Connor played a little tackle. Why not keep him at left tackle and keep Xavier Su'a-Filo as the left guard, and or rotate my guy Joe Looney as left guard, and let's see how that play out versus having a guy with inconsistency moving around like his musical chairs. How do you feel about that? Are you worried a little bit about that offensive line?
I mean, the offensive line is a little bit of a concern right now. Obviously, coming off that week that we saw, how they got beat really bad in the middle of the line. I know that Tyron he got hurt, obviously. He didn't give up any sacks. Dak got sacked the one time, but he was getting beat, Tyron was, and Dak was taking a lot of shots. Collins was about the only guy that had a really, really solid game for that line. Regarding Connor Williams as your tackle, he was left tackle at Texas. I think we talked about it before. He gave up only 2 sacks in his career, and both were to Dorrance Armstrong of all people. He's got ability there, but I do have some concerns. Maybe I have some concerns about him in that position for this current line. I like the idea better of him ultimately being right tackle, but they've kind of now paid Lyle there, so I don't see them paying him as one of the highest paid right tackles and then being like, now we're going to move him back inside the guard, even though you and I think that's where he's better. So I don't know. They're going to have to mix and match a little bit. Su'a-Filo, I think he's good as a changeup. He's got some dog in him and all that, and that's great. But I think there's also a reason he hasn't ever really been a sustained starter in the league, right? Like the Texans were surprised we got much ability out of him when we had to last year, and eventually it kind of tailed off where his play and Connor Williams was kind of comparable to each other. So I think that's kind of the difficulty there. You might be able to plug him in and get some solid play out of him for a while, but I don't think you can work with him regularly. So they're going to have to see how quickly they can get back Tyron Smith, and then they're going to have to figure out, like, okay, what can we do to make sure that the middle of our line is better, because everyone in the middle was getting beat. Zach Martin was getting beat. Travis is coming back from obviously not playing football for a year, the autoimmune disease, Guillain-Barré syndrome. He's played so well throughout his career. I mean, he's not just a Pro Bowler, he's an All-Pro.
Right.
So the fact that he had a bad game, I'm not worried about that. And obviously he's earned patience in that regard. If that becomes a trend as the year wears on, then maybe you wonder a little bit about the strengths or something like that, if he's lost a little bit of that strength that he had from that. But we just have to see. I mean, in some cases, people say that they never were quite the same in terms of strength, and in others, they bounced back and were 100%. So it's a rare thing, and I'm not trying to sound any alarms or anything. I'm just saying that's why I'm taking it with a grain of salt, even though that was probably the worst I've seen him get beat consistently in his career to date. But it wasn't just him. You also had Martin getting beat, and Martin's been dinged up the last year and a half. And then, Connor Williams. Connor Williams is an okay starter. He's the only reason we think he looks, we as the fan base, not we as in you and me necessarily, that we think that he's not a very good offensive lineman is because he literally plays surrounded by mostly all pros. Like he's got 3 all pros.
I think we offline. Oh my goodness. It just froze on us. And my computer's frozen as well.
I can hear you and see you. Can you see me?
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Let me see if it's going to kick back online. It's what Murphy Laws says what happened here. And I'm just going to see if it's going to kick back online. Sometime it regather itself, and sometime it don't. And
I think we're back.
We're back up line.
I mean, it's trying.
It's trying, and I got good internet speed here. I don't know why. Let's see. It's going to commercial here. Let me know if you guys can hear me in the chat. I really appreciate you all. Thank you all for tuning in to the nation. And let me see. Y'all back? Let me see. Don't know. Really don't know.
Yeah. Unfortunate timing. Oh, nope. I think we're back. Video's rolling.
All again. Good? Yeah.
I think we're good. Man, I was like in the last 2 words of my great little tirade there.
Yeah, tirade there. But here's the thing. The way the Saints played far as in the interior, and I hate to go back to the Saints, is everything I dreamed for this particular team. That Malcolm Brown was an asset for them to pick up during the offseason. I think he came from the Patriots, I believe. So yeah, he came from them. And then they got the Sheldon Rankins. I don't think that he played, but they had this other guy, I can't pronounce his name. But those guys, the big physical guys inside, is what I really want the Cowboys to invest in. Now, we do see some guys like the Malik Collins of the world and Hyder, but they are not those big, burly, physical, I'm going to move you out of the way type of guys. And that's not Papa Rob Marinelli's system. Now, fast forwarding to this Green Bay Packers game, we got to be mindful of Preston Smith. He's a guy that knows how to get to the quarterback. And now, although their numbers are not that great, but I'm thinking that him on that line, and then they got somebody else, and his name is slipping my mind, but they, on the edge, they don't have that the pressure to kick inside as much. But on the edge, the Green Bay Packers are looking really good. And they got a guy that flies. I'm talking about flies out to the ball like no other. Blake Martinez. If you turn on any Green Bay Packers film, you'll see number 50 just flying around to the ball, chasing. So this team that we're going to face is a very fast team. They're not a they're more, let's say, finesse than anything, you see.
Right.
So we got to be mindful of that, especially playing against that particular defense.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So do we have a couple bold predictions before we round out this episode?
Deal? Yeah. All right. So my thing is, the bold prediction would be, for me, will be Dak Prescott, 4 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns, 325 yards, as well as with Ezekiel Elliott, 125 of them and 1 touchdown. So that's what I'm looking for. Boldly.
That's pretty bold for sure. I gave one of mine earlier. Tony Pollard having a big day as well, 80 plus yards on the ground and a touchdown. I don't know. I mean, let's just say he chips in another 23 yards through the air, and total gives you over 100. How about that? There's one bold prediction. Yeah. I also think the defense keeps it rolling. I think the defense we saw him get 5 sacks last week against Bridgewater. I know obviously Aaron Rodgers, he's a much better passer certainly than Bridgewater is, and he'll take shots downfield, particularly the back right, and that means he's going to be going after Cheeto a lot in this game. But I'm willing to say Jeff Heath specifically is going to intercept Aaron Rodgers, because that's what we saw in 2016. Remember, he had 2 of them. Second one called back because of a bogus penalty away from the ball. But I'm going to say the Cowboys defense forces 2 turnovers, one of them being a Jeff Heath interception. And I'm going to say the defense in general gets to him with another 4-sack day.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm going to get up a little bit more than that. I tell you what, Robert Quinn had 6.5 sacks last year, I believe. Do you have that number in your head? 6.5. I'm calling it now. 6.5. So Robert Quinn matches his total production from last year on Sunday. How about that? He match it. So he's going to get 3.
6.5 sacks.
No. He's going to get 3. I'm talking about collectively, because he got 3. He got 3 sacks now, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to get 3.5 sacks on Sunday. He's going to be chasing Aaron, the bad man, Rodgers. And your thing is, the good quarterbacks, they know how to get down, right? So Aaron Rodgers always look to throw the ball and these sorts of things. I'm thinking that D-Law is going to have his coming out party. My guy Cheeto Woozier, he's going to have him another interception. And just how it's going to go. My thing is, I'm hoping and I'm praying and I'm wishing that, and I'm dreaming that Papa Rob Marinelli and Chris Richard go ahead and throw away their stubbornness and say, you know what, Byron Jones, we normally don't do this, But in this type of situation, we want you to go back to covering, just for this game, covering Jimmy, the tight end, because he is a bad monster out there. So that's what I'm looking at. We're going to have to do that. And we Cowboys win. I do know that I gave them more touchdowns than my bro predicts more touchdowns than what I'm going to predict now. I'm predicting the score is going to be 28-24 Cowboys all day, baby. Let's go.
All right. There you go. I think we have 4 games since 2015 getting 5 sacks.
Right.
So that's pretty rare territory. And the reason that, was something that came up was because that they did it last week. So it's been pretty rare for them to get that kind of pressure. Now, obviously, if they can get that kind of pressure, then this should be, I think, a Cowboys win for sure. Yeah. Cowboys are the healthier team. I think the Cowboys are the deeper team. The one major wild card here is Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers is that dude. And yes, they've beaten us 7 out of 8 times, all of which is because of Aaron Rodgers. So I think Cowboys win this one as well. I think they have a 28-20 victory in this game. I think ultimately they have more weapons, and the fact that they're at home will allow them to just step a little bit outside of it. I think it's close late, and Cowboys get a late score to kind of ice it.
Yes, indeed, man. That's a fantastic, bold prediction. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to hit up Cowboys Experience. That's www.cowboysexperience.com, where you can get amazing ticket pricing, and as well as the event tomorrow. Don't meet me there, beat me there at 2:00 at the Lava Cantina. It's in the Colony, or at the Colony, and just go out there and meet us up at 2:00. I cannot wait to see y'all beautiful faces, man. I really can't. And then on top of that, Cowboy Nation, let's just think positive. Let's continue to take this thing one day at a time, one movement at a time, day by day. And when we look up, when we look back, we'll see that what we've been doing, it's been doing great things. And DDP, let them know where they can find you at and follow your wonderful content.
For sure. You can check me out on YouTube at the Dallas Prospect. Talk a lot of Cowboys, a lot of Mavericks. Mavericks season's about to fire up here very soon. Already had media day, and preseason starts this week. Dallas Stars started up last night as well. Haven't had a chance to talk about them yet, but I'm going to try and cover them a little bit this year as well. And occasionally we sprinkle in some other stuff like college football talk, Big 12 specifically. If you want to read my work, you can check it out on thedallasprospect.com. You can also go to Dallas Sports Fanatic, or as we referenced at the start of this show, I also write for Clutch Points as well. My last Clutch Points article, the very divisive one, was actually, I think it was my first one for Clutch that got picked up by Bleacher Report as well. So that was pretty cool. Admittedly, I have not checked every article I've submitted for them to see if it got picked up. So I don't know. As far as I know, it's the first one I did. But plenty of places to find my work. Heck, go to Bleacher Report. Apparently there's at least a decent chance that something of mine will be there.
Right. That's some good stuff, man. And check out thedallasprospect.com. Yep. Where every legend was once a prospect. Let my guy Jalen Smith talk to you all.
Hi, I'm Jalen Smith, linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm here with Cowboys Experience, enjoying my time. Happy to be here. We got a lot of fans out. Let's give it. All right. Hey, go Cowboys. Clear eye view.
This is Zach Martin. Welcome to the Cowboys Experience.
Hey, I'm Michael Gallup of the Dallas Cowboys, wide receiver. Welcome to the Cowboys Experience. Come see me this fall.
Fans, this is Jeff Heath. Just want to welcome you guys to the Cowboys Experience. Hope you have a good time.
How you doing? Lyle Collins of the Dallas Cowboys. Welcome to Cowboys Experience.
All right, that's been all the time that we have for today. Don't forget to hit us up, cowboysexperience.com, and call that number. Call the number that's in the description box as well, and hit us up, Cowboy Nation. And remember, you're listening to nothing but the best. Salute. We're out. Peace.
Peace.
Good show, man. Good show.
Yeah, great show, man. Yeah.